Okay, so we're going to take this video now to the next stage. You can see I've worked a little bit further on the tone in this image from the last time. And again, I'll be working from a photograph which is just off camera, and you should be doing the same. So you can see what I've done here is started to add a wider range of tone. I'm using an HB and a B, and I also have a 2B. If you have purely an HB, that's absolutely fine, you can work with that. You're just going to have to work a little bit harder to get the darker tones with that. If you're lucky enough to have a set of pencils or several grades of pencils, I would recommend anything from an HB to a 4B and beyond if you wish to get the really darker tones. So what the darker grades of pencils really help with, obviously, are getting those really much darker tones in there. So to start with, I just want to do a really little sort of quick recap on how to add the tone. You can see I've added a little bit more here, and I'm trying to blend this as much as I can. Okay, so what I've noticed is that this plate should actually be in front of the teapot. Now you might find as you work your way through that there are things you think are not accurate. Now that's absolutely fine. The whole point of observing is trying to copy accurately what you see, and you then use it to analyse what you've done and make improvements. Now just because you've done the drawing does not mean you can't then fix certain things as you work your way around. Now a lot of this is going to be shaded anyway, so just because you've started something, just because you've drawn it out already, you don't slavishly stick to that drawing if you find a mistake. Okay, and you won't find that any artists really do this. They'll quite often go back, they'll fix things, they might even start things again, but that's very rare. Normally people will just fix what they already have. Okay, so the teapot should be behind, and for that reason this curve of the plate needs to come over the top. If we do it any other way, it's going to look strange. The teapot looking like it's sitting on top of the plate would be inaccurate, and it would look very strange. So fix that little bit there. I'll come back and do more to that later. I also fixed a little bit earlier the top of the cup. The ellipse wasn't quite right, so I've moved that up a little bit, and again I might come back to that later. But for just now, that's where we are with that. And these are starting to look as a drawing a little bit more accurate, and I'm starting to get a wider range of tone. Now remember we spoke before about turning your paper around. Okay, it makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to blend accurately. It makes it a little bit less awkward for your hand and your wrist as well. Now what I want to remind you about as we start to build these tones up is that you should be using, for example on the teapot, curvy lines of shading, and if it's a flat surface, for example on the piece of Battenberg cake here, I would be using straight lines because it's a flat surface. Okay, if you do anything else, it's perhaps not going to look quite right, because your curvy lines make your objects look curvy and your straight lines make them look flat exactly as they are. So we need to try and get that quite accurate. Okay, so I'm trying to observe any detail as I go, but I'm also trying to build up the tone as well. Now something like the teapot, in terms of the surface, it's a little bit reflective, it has a white glaze, and on this, as in a lot of objects, there's quite a wide range of different tones. There isn't simply dark, medium and light. There's a huge range of tonal values in between those as well. Now what I quite often like to do is start by trying to identify the darker ones. Those are the easier ones to find, and then I'll sort of blend from there, and I'll try and then find the sort of the medium and the light ones as well. The light ones are easy because you don't have to apply a lot of pencil for those. Okay, So, to recap then, what we're doing now is really a couple of periods of just building up tone. Now, it's particularly difficult for me being left-handed. I tend to smudge absolutely everything. If you find that is the case for you, whether you're left or right-handed, simply get a little piece of paper, any type of paper, anything, to cover what you've already done. It's unlikely in most houses you'll have fixative, and this is something which fixes your pencil, but we generally just use this at the end anyway, because you might find you change your mind and want to change things. A good alternative for fixative is hairspray. If you have any, particularly good cheap stronghold hairspray is pretty good for this job. And I wouldn't however recommend we do this until really near the end when it's finished, because you can see I'm changing things as I go, and the reason for that is I'm noticing as I work my way through things that I need to change. I can still see other things that I need to change. There's a lot of work to be done on this, in my opinion, still, in terms of adding the tone and the detail and really starting to develop this image in terms of the accuracy. But for the moment, this is absolutely fine. So I'm just working my way through building some of the tones up that I've blocked in really quickly to show you. Not quite enough yet, so I'm starting to put in the curvy lines of shading and the straight lines of shading wherever I think they should go. I'm really just trying to develop the tonal values in this a little bit more. And you know that what happens here is really that tone will help to make this look as if it has form, as if it's three-dimensional. And if I don't put in a wide enough range of tone, it's going to look really flat. And you can see that with some of the areas here, for example. It doesn't have a huge amount of a three-dimensional quality yet, but in the other areas that I've worked on a little bit more, you can see that's starting to be built up already, and they do look a bit more three-dimensional. So let's spend a little bit of time adding more tone, adding detail, and really trying to be analytical. So what you're doing is you're essentially observing really closely, you're examining the image that you're working from, and you're trying to recreate that. So it's not enough to look once and then look again 5 or 10 minutes later because you think you've got it in your head. You need to essentially do a little bit of shading or do a little bit of a line, check it against your photograph, check your drawing, go back and do that again and repeat the process. So essentially I'm examining and analysing constantly as I work my way through the image. I'm doing a little line, I'm flicking my eyes up and looking at the photograph, checking it and going again and doing the next little bit, and so on. So you're looking, you're drawing, you're looking at the photograph again, and you're checking what you've done, and you're going to repeat that process as you go. So look, draw, look again, check, keep this going over a matter of every sort of few seconds or so. And it's a constant, continuous process as you develop your drawing. Okay, so building up the tone, observing really closely, developing those observational drawing skills. Okay, and remembering that technique so it's really nice and soft. Okay, good luck folks.